So welcome back to Proactive ESL, the place where we activate your English with teacher Andy. Today we're going to be looking at a specific grammar topic. We're not going to be looking at a function or a skill or a specific conversation topic. Today the grammar topic that we're going to be looking at is present perfect. Present perfect is usually for a level that's intermediate or upper intermediate. Usually you begin to see it when it is intermediate, but if you're upper intermediate, you can look at the lesson and it will probably help you to review a little bit. Why is it so important to look at present perfect? Present perfect is a very important tense in English. The most important thing is that you use it a lot in English, especially in conversations. So of course, here at Proactive ASL, we try to focus on trying to use your English for conversation. Present perfect is the tense that makes the difference between a person that is beginners, intermediate, or upper intermediate. When you really are able to use present perfect, you really have a transformation in your English from intermediate to upper intermediate. This is why it is so important. Now, also, present perfect is a very complex tense in English. There are many uses for it, and we have to choose. We can choose to learn all the grammar, the little exceptions, the different uses, and then not use it in conversation. Or we can choose to just learn some of the uses, but actually be able to use them in conversation. Here at Proactive ESL, we choose the second option because for us, the important thing is for the student to be able to feel good in using the language. Of the different uses, the one that we're going to focus on is have you ever? Have you ever been? Have you ever done? Have you ever gone? For example, have you ever worn a flamingo shirt like this one over here for teacher Andy? And again, we're going to focus on that one, but there are many other ones. You can use present perfect with for or since or already or yet or before. So again, it's very complex, but we have to select one to try to be able to feel good when we really know how to use it and learn it. Also, present perfect is very important because it is the moment when you learn something that are called past participles. Past participles are crucial for your English, not only for present perfect, but also because when you learn past participles, you will see them again and again and again when you're upper intermediate or advanced. Past participles appear in past perfect, future perfect, they appear in untrue conditionals, they appear also in modals in the past, and they also appear, of course, in passive voice. So the more you learn right now, the past participles, the better and easier it's going to get when you really advance in your English. If you don't learn them right now, then when you see those topics, you will be very limited. Of course, you learn present perfect also because when you learn it, and you know that you're really beginning to be upper intermediate, you feel great about it. You feel that now finally you have advanced in your English. And in contrast, when you're intermediate, you just basically use the present, the past, and the future. This is fine, no problem at all. If you can only use the basic tenses, I think this is fantastic. Use them well, you can communicate so much with them, but if you want to really push your English to the next level, then present perfect is the way to go. Finally, the last thing that I can say is that there are some languages which do not have conjugation of verbs, like Chinese Mandarin, which I'm studying right now. And imagine, if you don't have verbs that conjugate, then imagine trying to learn a tense like present perfect. I'm going to give a few examples for Chinese students as well. Another very important reason, before I forget, is the idea that when you go to a job interview, because they're speaking about your past and related to the present, you will hear a lot of present perfect. If you want to get a job in English, you'd better prepare present perfect so that you can understand and answer when you're at an interview. So let's try and set up our private class. Remember, in the private class, using apps like Zoom or apps like Skype, we will try to activate and practice all the things that we're learning today in the presentation for present perfect. We're going to focus on the topic of dreams. So let's do it. Let's activate your present perfect. Let's activate your past participles. Let's go ahead and let's activate your English. And also let's activate your dreams. So welcome once again to Proactive ESL, with teacher Andy. Today, remember, the topic of our grammar is going to be present perfect. We're going to work with it. We're going to try to activate it. We're going to try to do many exercises so that you feel comfortable using it, understanding it. And the way that we're going to do it is, again, as usual here at Proactive ESL, the way that we start is not by me giving you a grammatical explanation. Many of you have already had many grammatical explanations in classes. But the idea instead is to try to activate your English. Again, remember, we activate it and we don't worry if we know it perfectly or not, if we know the present perfect, if we understand the present perfect at the beginning. We just want you to be able to speak. That's the whole point. Now, how are we going to do it? The first general questions are going to be about dreams. We're going to talk about those a little bit. And then from there, we're going to look at some beautiful images about dreaming and situations which are very beautiful to try to imagine. From there, we're going to work with an exercise that is going to be, have you ever been, a chart. Remember, we're going to focus on one specific use of the present perfect. This is the use, have you ever, and the idea is you will be able to practice it a lot. Finally, you will have a conversation with some friends. We will see a video, and while you see the video, you can come up with some possible examples for the conversation. Now, remember, this first part, we're going to focus on trying to activate your English. It doesn't matter if you know or if you do not know present perfect. Just say whatever you can. Remember, you can always use your phone and Google Translate to translate the English into your own language, not only visually, but again, Google Translate can do it, and it does an awesome job of translating it orally. So again, if you don't understand one question, go ahead and do that so that you don't think, oh, I can't do it. Of course you can. We have the technology right now to be able to do it independently of a teacher. Then we're going to really focus on the grammar, and we're going to look at the grammar so that you understand how to form present perfect, how the present perfect is formed, what auxiliary, and what are the different parts in the questions and the answers. And then we're going to actually look at the uses. Remember, we're going to look at the uses in general, but we're going to focus on one specific use for the exercises. Briefly, we're going to look at the past participles, but of course we cannot do that here right now in this presentation. We can do it in a private class when we set it up. So we're going to focus on a few past participles, and the reason I want to focus on those is because usually students have a tough time trying to pronounce them and understanding them, right? So we'll focus on those. There are specifically two groups, and then from there we're going to start using it. And again, we're going to start using the present perfect. How are we going to do it? As usual, we'll have a basic conversation where you can actually see how it is used, especially if you're even an intermediate student and you're just seeing present perfect for the first time. Then we'll do a conversation topic so that you can actually engage and try to use the present perfect with somebody else, probably a relative or somebody, a friend that you can Skype or you can have a virtual conversation with. And then we're going to focus on listening. Remember, here at Proactive ESL, we want you not only to be able to use the language, but also, and very importantly in English, the idea is to understand it. If you can understand it, then you're able to follow the conversation. And by following the conversation, you feel much better about being able to produce. For the conversation topic, we're going to use the amazing 50/50 text. I've used them before in other presentations here at Proactive ESL. And then for the listening exercise, which is about dreams, we're going to be using the touchstone text, which are really, really amazing as well. Finally, we're going to do an exercise for you to try to imagine what it would be like to focus on present perfect during a job interview. You will try to come up with some questions and try to understand that when you learn present perfect, this is a real case where you will have to be able to not only use it, but understand it. They will ask you many questions with present perfect. Finally, especially for my Chinese students, I will give you some basic tips as to why present perfect is so difficult for Chinese students that are learning English. I myself am learning Mandarin, so I try to understand how difficult it is. And these tips, I hope they will help you to understand why present perfect is tough for you and how you will be able to use it. At the end, we will look at the homework as we usually do. Remember, I set up some homework. I email it to your email address beforehand. And then when we do the lesson and then you yourself do the homework at home, then we combine those, and in the private lesson, we actually get together and activate everything that we have been doing. So let's do it. Let's activate your present perfect here at Proactive ESL. Let's activate your dreams, and let's go ahead and do it. So remember, here at Proactive ESL, we usually begin with a specific topic. The specific topic for this lesson is going to be your dreams. specifically this one. What are your dreams? The idea is I want you to try to think a little bit about your future. What do you want from your life? And then don't worry about present perfect or anything like that. Just try to focus on what you really imagine your future is going to be like and talk a little bit about it. Of course, there are two questions. The first one is, what are your top dreams? Tell us 2 things that you have done and 2 that you have not done yet. I will give you one example. I have always wanted to visit China. I haven't been there before. I've tried to do it so that I can become a teacher there. So hopefully in the future, maybe this year or next year, depending on how the COVID-19 situation evolves, then perhaps this dream may come true for teacher Andy. Of the things that I have already done, I can say that I have learned many languages. I have really learned many languages after I really learned to be a teacher of English. And the thing is, I did it because I started to enjoy learning a language. The more you enjoy learning the language and the more as a teacher you learn other languages, I think you're better prepared to be able to think about the learning situation in the mind of the student. The more you learn to be in the chair of the student, the better you're prepared to help them try to activate their English, to be prepared, not to be so afraid to make so many mistakes, right? And then question number 2 is this one. It's, which hobby have you always wanted to do? Tell us how you're planning to make it real in 3 steps. And one of the hobbies that I've always wanted to do is this one. For example, I have always wanted to do drone photography. And why? Because I have done a lot of photography before. It's one of my hobbies that I've dedicated a lot of time to. I have shown in many other videos here at Proactive ESL many examples of my photography so that you can connect with your English. But specifically for drone photography, I had a drone some years ago, but it was an older, much bigger drone. It was very difficult. I learned to pilot it, but right now the drones are really small. So my dream is to have the smaller drones and to be able to take them with me to many places, fly them, and again, connect to that photography that I do. You see, so there you have it. Those are the 2 examples for me of my dreams. For question number 1, the idea for China and learning a language. Question number 2, the hobby, drone photography and photography. Now, please tell me for question number 1, what are your top dreams? And for question number 2, your hobbies. And remember, try to use your phone to record yourself. Look at each question. Again, if you can do it with somebody else, that's great. And again, try to record yourself for 1 or 2 minutes. And remember, the whole point is not to think about present perfect. It's just for you to talk about your dreams, because they are your dreams. Then it's much easier for you to actually use the language. Remember, again, I'm going to show you 2 videos so that you can use your phone, especially beginners or intermediate students that see these words and they're difficult for you. But if you use Google Translate app, then you can do it and you can actually be participating in the lesson even if you do not understand at the moment. We can use technology right now to be very independent from the teacher, and that way we can learn the language so much more easily and so much more independently, okay? So again, try to record yourself, send me the recording so that I can hear what your dreams are. Let's move on.
What are your top dreams? ¿Cuáles son tus mejores sueños?
When we have an English class, usually many students want the teacher to go ahead and tell them the grammar, right? Especially if you're outside Canada or the US and you don't have the ability to look at English outside the class. But the idea is the best way to actually learn the language is first trying to use it. Don't worry so much about learning all the specific details of the grammar, but actually try to use the language. And as you use it, we can incorporate or we can add other elements so that your English really evolves and you feel so much better with it. So the next exercise is this one. Have you ever? And again, what I want you to do is I want you to try again. Maybe you won't be able to, but do whatever you can with the language that you have. Look at the pictures that I'm going to show you. They're about some really amazing and cool dreams. And then what I want you to do is look at the picture, look at the specific verb that appears with the picture, and talk about the picture in terms of what the dream is. If you can, if you're an upper intermediate student or if you're an intermediate student that has already seen present perfect, then I want you to activate present perfect right now. Look at the pictures. You have a verb. You know how to use it. Use the past participle and try to make the question how with have you ever. Let's look at picture number 1. So again, here you have a beautiful image, right? That's a hot balloon, right? Over there. I mean, this is a dream for many people to be able to ride in a hot balloon. But again, what I want you to do is I want you to try to make the question for the hot balloon and write. And again, I'll give you this example for sure. This one is, have you ever ridden in a hot balloon, right? Remember, for the past participle is ridden, so I just go ahead and say, have you ever ridden in a hot balloon? Now remember, it doesn't matter if you understand or don't understand have you ever or ride or ridden. Don't worry about it. If you are a beginner or intermediate student and you have not seen present perfect, just look at the image and try to say anything that you want about the image. And again, take 1 minute. Take 1 minute for each image. Pause the video, talk about it, and again, connect to the previous exercise because we're talking about dreams. Remember, this idea, look at that beautiful image, the beautiful picture, being in the sky, you know, looking at everything from far above. This is a beautiful sensation for everybody, like flying, like being a bird. Who doesn't want that? Let's look at the other images. For the other ones, I'm not going to help you. Try to do them yourself, record yourself, and try to send me the recordings so that we together can see how you are actually progressing with your English. If you can use present perfect, great. If you can't, perfect as well. Okay. Number 2. Number 3. Beautiful, eh? Number 4. A lot of imagination, right? Number 5. This one reminds me of movies, right? So again, look at the images, pause the video, try to come up with the present perfect if you can. Have you ever? And again, once you come up with a question, discuss a little bit or try to think about what that specific image or that specific dream means to you. Are you connected to that image? Are you connected to that dream? Do you have similar dreams in your own specific life? Okay, now again, remember, if you cannot use a present perfect, you don't know what that is, don't worry. Look at the image, enjoy it, try to say what you see in the image in any level of English that you have with any mistakes. Right now, we just want to produce the language, we just want to use the language, and then slowly we're starting to look at how it's formed and how you actually form it correctly with the correct grammar, okay? I know some students are wondering, oh my God, when is he going to explain the present perfect? I need the explanation before I can use it. But no, the idea is, number 1, some of the students that are watching this video have taken classes for many months or years and they have seen present perfect again and again and again. But because we have such big classes, they never actually use it. So because you're there on your own, you can actually watch the video and come up with some examples. And the idea is I give you the sets so that you are able to actually produce them. Again, number 1. And number 2, again, remember, if you have not seen present perfect, don't worry about it. Try to do the best that you can. We'll talk in the present, in the past, whichever is fine. But remember, we first try to use the language and only later we focus on getting the grammatical explanation with all the details that are there, okay? So what is the exercise here? Remember, we have been focusing on have you ever, again in English, very frequently used to talk about the general past. Here we have different actions, they're in blue. For example, visited Canada. I wrote the past participle for you so that you don't have to remember it if you are, again, an intermediate student and this is new to you. So again, the idea is for number 1, you have you ever, and then you have in the first blue box, visited Canada, or you can think of another country, right? So again, the question is, have you ever visited Canada? Again, try to make the question. I know some of you all have already seen present perfect, so it's going to be, again, easy for you. Have you ever visited Canada? And again, for the answer is yes, I have, or no, I haven't, right? Depending on the situation. And in this one, you have the name of different people. Number 1 is Andy, teacher Andy. So again, the question, have you ever visited Canada? Yes, I have. I have visited Canada many times. And actually, because I'm Canadian, I have lived here for many years. I'm also Colombian, so I have lived in Colombia for many years, and I've tried to keep connected to both of my countries, which I love very much. So you see how it goes. I make the question. You already have the example, visited Canada, or perhaps another country if Canada is difficult for you. Then, have you ever visited China? Have you ever visited Mongolia? Have you ever visited Japan? And then try to get somebody, a friend, you can Skype them, and together you can ask the different questions. And again, look for the blue section, you can even add different examples as well. Try to answer yes or no. And when you answer, for example, for this one, have you ever visited Canada? If you know present perfect, please try to remember to use the short answer, yes I have, or no I haven't. And for the long answer, yes I visited, use the contraction I visited, or no I haven't visited Canada. Again, if you are a beginner student or intermediate student and you're a little bit lost, again, try to talk a little bit about Canada and try to ask the questions in any tense that you can, okay? So try to fill it out, and then when you fill it out, we can look at it together in the class. Number 2 is, have you ever been in a canoe? Teacher Andy, yes I have. I've been in a canoe many times. The canoe is the symbol of Canada because this is the way that Canadians, they mobilize by using the canoe. The canoe is really a symbol of Canada, especially during the winter. These rivers, many of them were not frozen, so they were like the highways for Canadians many years ago. Number 3 is, have you ever eaten poutine? Okay, I'm going to show you a picture of poutine so that you can actually understand what that is. Have you ever eaten? Of course, teacher, yes, I have. I've eaten poutine many times. It's not very healthy, but again, it's delicious and something that is a tradition in Quebec and here in Canada as well. Number 4 is, have you driven a motorcycle? And you see how, again, the same idea. Have you ever driven a motorcycle? And again, even if you don't know in the present perfect, again, try to repeat it. I don't have to explain it to you so that you can use it. Just repeat it. Have you ever driven a motorcycle? Teacher Andy, yes, I have. I have driven a motorcycle before. I really love motorcycles. I don't like huge motorcycles, but I love scooters. My motorcycle driver's license. Next one is, have you ever played the piano? And this one, no, I haven't. I have never played the piano. I would really like to learn how to play the piano, but not in general, not like any classical music, right? But more specifically, I would like to play the piano more for salsa music. I don't know if you know. Salsa music, but this is very special for pianists, and the way that they play, it's really, really amazing. Okay, finally, have you ever, and again, final question, this one over here, have you ever studied French? Look at the intonation, right? I say, have you ever studied French? Short answer, again, if it's yes I have. So yes, I've studied French before. I've studied French because, as you know, Canada is a bilingual country, and because it's a bilingual country, it has English and French as the official languages. Many students come to Canada to learn English, and they don't really understand that Canada has 2 official languages and that these are 2 very, very different cultures. Because my last name is from Quebec, Cousineau, then I really learned French because it's part of my tradition and I try to keep it alive. There you go. Those are my examples. You see how I just repeated the examples? I didn't say, teacher, please explain to me the present perfect before I use it. No, just use it. Try to get some idea of how it works, right? And then try to find a friend, and with that friend, try to look at these questions, and remember, each one has or if you want to change the different kind of food, or if you want to change the different kind of transportation, or a different kind of instrument. The most important thing is first use the language, then we try to look at how we use it and all these things, okay? The final exercise we have before we actually look at how the present perfect is formed in grammar and how you use it, right, is this one. Imagine that you are with friends, you're having a conversation, and again, you're talking about dreams, you're talking about the past experiences. Have you ever, your dreams, what have you done? What have you not done? We have tried to do many examples before this one, but for this one, what I want you to do is I want you to imagine you're in that conversation and just as quickly as you can, try to think of 5 questions related to present perfect that you would ask your friends, related specifically to dreams. Try to imagine situations like the ones that we have done before. Have you ever, or talking about your dreams with friends. This is a very natural way to talk with friends. And again, the whole idea is now I'm not going to give you any examples because we have worked progressively so that now I want you to just believe that you yourself can make the questions and you don't need a teacher to tell you what question to ask, how to ask it. Just ask the question. If you have questions in other tenses, add them as well, ask them. But very importantly, try to come up with 5 in the present perfect. If you do not know present perfect, you have no idea what I'm talking about, don't worry about it. Ask any questions that you can. We're going to look in a few seconds at how to form the present perfect and how to use it, okay? We have already tried to do many exercises using your English. Remember, if you do not know present perfect, it doesn't matter. Just use your English. Right now, we're going to look at the grammar. So if you don't know present perfect, we're going to look at it right now and then you can add it to your English. But if you already know present perfect, and I know many of you already studied present perfect many times, then the exercises we did before was to get you used to actually using your English. Don't review first the grammar and then finally decide to use your English. But instead, if you already know the present perfect, start using it. If you remember, great. If you don't, then it's an opportunity for you to try to remember the verbs, the past participles. And remember, if you're new and you do not know it, we're going to go ahead and look at the grammar itself. This is the basic grammar for present perfect. I can have, as you know, in English, yes, no questions. And remember, in English, it's very special because we have auxiliaries. And of course, there is a special auxiliary for the present perfect in English. And the auxiliary is in red for you to notice it. It's has, right? Has or have. And so when you make a question, right, you have, has Mary ever been to Canada? This is a question in present perfect. And again, in red, you have the auxiliary as we usually do. If we have for the future, what's the auxiliary? For sure, will. And if I want it for the past in general, then for sure, there you go, did. And if I want to do it for the simple present, what's the auxiliary? There you go. There you go, that's it, do or does. So you see, we always use auxiliaries in English. It doesn't matter if it's yes, no questions or information questions. It's not the same thing here, but we only use have or has. And the most important thing comes after the auxiliary. So here in the question we have, has Mary ever been to Canada? If you see now we have the verb, but it is a very special form of the verb, right? Can you see it in green? There you go. Do you know what that form of the verb is in English? There you go. Some of you might know, some of you might not know, but in English, this is the past participle. So again, how do we form present perfect in English? We use the auxiliary, which we usually use in English in any tense. So you have the auxiliary have or has, right? And then you use the past participle. How do I learn the past participle? It's very easy. You have to memorize and practice the past participles. Usually when you go to an English class, you have a list like this, and then you have the present, the past participle. We're going to look at some of them in a few seconds, especially for pronunciation. But again, the most important thing is for you to understand that if you do not know the past participle, the third line here, the third column here, then you cannot use present perfect. Because to form present perfect, you actually have to use those past participles. Now, not only for the grammar, but also for the pronunciation, right? So again, we have this example here to start out with. And again, it's a very simple example. Has Mary ever been to Canada? Again, the idea I'm asking about the general past. The answer can be something like this, right? I can say, again, if it's affirmative, yes, she has, right? Or if it's negative, no, she hasn't. Remember, for the answers in English, we usually use the auxiliary for the short answer. It's a good idea for you to practice using it because it's very frequent to answer with the again using the auxiliary. And again, if you have a lot of auxiliaries, present, past, future, present perfect, you start to get mixed up and you really do not know if it's will or did or does. So always get used to, when you're learning a tense in English, to try to use the short answer with the auxiliary also. In this channel, for the YouTube channel here at Proactive ESL, I have a video for tag questions. When you look at tag questions, you will see what is the problem if you really do not know what the auxiliaries are in English. So let's go ahead and look at the answers, right? Has Mary ever been to Canada? Remember, for the intonation, I say, Has Mary ever been to Canada? Has Mary ever been to Canada? Remember, we usually do not accent the auxiliaries in English. So again, yes, she has. She's been there before. She went in 2005. It's beautiful. Or negative, no, she hasn't. She's never been there. She wants to go after COVID-19. Now, if you look at that dynamic, the way that it works is like this. Of course, you have, has Mary ever been to Canada? Short answer, yes, she has. Or no, no, she hasn't. And then if you want, you can usually have the long answer. Usually you can say she has been there before, right? In the case of affirmative. Or I can say negative, right? She's never been there. Now, what is the use of the present perfect? What's the importance of the present perfect? When you start the conversation, you do not know. So again, we use present perfect as a starter, but then when you answer and you want to be specific in your answer, then you usually change to another tense. For example, I say, has Mary ever been to Canada? Yes, she has. She has been there before. She went in 2005. It's beautiful. When I want to be specific at a point in the past, then I use the past, right? She went in 2005. But as a starter, we use the present perfect because we're asking in general about the situation that we do not know. Or also, I can say negative. She's never been there. And she wants to go after COVID-19. Again, the idea is I again answer for present perfect, but if I want to add more information, more specific information, I use simple present. So that's kind of the dynamic we're going to be working at here in the lesson today. So again, we have question number 2. Have you ever studied French? Remember, you have for the third person in English has, she has, he has, it has. But for the other pronouns, we have, right? I have, you have, they have, we have. And so you have they ever studied French? Remember, for the intonation, again, we do not accent the auxiliary. So again, I go like this. Have they ever studied French? And remember, for yes, no questions, the intonation goes up. Have they ever studied French? And again, listen, I put the accent in the past participle, right? Have they ever studied French? Remember, some of the past participles are irregular, like been. Some of the past participles are regular, like studied. And a possible answer for this one is like this. So have they ever studied French? Yes, they have, the short answer, right? Or no, they haven't. Again, if it's negative, remember, we can always use negative contractions, haven't. And then finally, you have, they have studied for 6 months, right? If you want to add affirmative answer, or if you have a negative answer, they've never studied it before, for example, right? Now, you see again the dynamic. You have number 1. What is the auxiliary for the present perfect? There you go. It's in red, have or has, right? Now, again, what do you need that is in green? In green, you have the, there you go. That's called the past participle. Now, for regular past participles, it's easy because it's the same as the verb in the past. So I have study, studied, studied. So again, it's kind of easy because I just have to remember the past, studied, and remembering the past in English is not as difficult as other languages. The problem with the pronunciation is a different thing, but we can't go into the pronunciation of the regulars right now in the lesson. Again, what is the dynamic for this specific use of the present perfect? I can ask in general, have they ever studied French? Again, I answer, yes, they have. They've studied for 6 months. But if I want to be more specific, then again, I switch my verb and I try to use present or past or future. For example, yes, they have studied for 6 months. They live in Quebec, right? Again, this is such a situation that is connected to the present. That's why it's called present perfect. But if I want to be more specific, then I change and I want to use other tenses. Or for example, negative, I can say, no, they haven't. They've never studied it. And again, if I want to emphasize that it is right now, I can say they're studying English right now at the university, right? So again, you see the dynamic. What we're trying to do is for you, and you will see many exercises in a moment, where you understand present perfect because you know that it is used a lot in terms of trying to start a conversation because I don't know the situation that you're in or that you have been in the past. So I start with it. You can answer me back this general information that you have. Have you ever cooked? Have you ever done? Have you? And then I answer, yes, I have. No, I haven't. But if I want to continue telling you some more specific information, then I switch the verb. I usually go present, past, whatever it is that you want to express, okay? So the idea, again, very important. Remember, in English, we use the auxiliary. What is the auxiliary for present perfect? There you go, have, has. What is the other tense of the verb that we have to use? There you go, the past participle, many people call them the PP, right? The past participles. And again, remember two things, very, very important. The use of the auxiliary have and the past participle. When you use the auxiliary have, remember in English we have a lot of contractions, right? So I usually say I've gone, I've been. People do not usually say I have gone, I have been, but I've gone, I've been. People do not usually say she has eaten, but she's eaten, right? She's eaten. Now, the idea to learn this kind of dynamic for English, go look the video that I uploaded for pronunciation. It will tell you how it is that English works in groups, and it will help you a lot in terms of trying to make your intonation sound like the intonation of English, right? So again, remember, we have the past participle, and again, we have the auxiliary have. What is another point that we have to always remember? It's this one. Just always be careful with the contractions and of the pronunciation of the past participles. We already talked about that. Again, remember, usually in English, be prepared to listen to I've gone, not I have gone. And if you want to hear I have gone, nobody speaks like that. So you will be constantly lost. You will not understand what people are saying, okay? She's been, she's gone. Now, in the class that we will prepare a kind of a quiz with past participles and questions. So to see if you are able to actually hear the contractions or not. For the pronunciation of the past participles, remember we have regulars and irregulars. We're going to look at that in a few seconds. Now, the most important thing for this is that I really believe this, that verbs are the heart of a language and you must really take them to heart, right? Really take them to heart. The idea is you have to really know them. If you want to use present perfect, but you do not know many past participles, then of course you will not be able to use present perfect correctly, right? And understood, because if it uses present perfect and you do not use the past participle, it sounds very, very weird. Again, no problem. It takes time, I know for sure. Take your time, study the verbs, try to get a video online where you pronounce all the past participles because we can't do it right now. But again, remember, it takes time to start to use the present perfect. If you learn the past participles, the benefit is that it is used in past perfect, future perfect, passive voice, modals in the past, untrue conditionals. So the idea is to learn them now. This is the moment to learn them. This will really activate your English as you move on from intermediate to upper intermediate and even more to advanced. Don't arrive to an advanced class or an upper intermediate class, for example, for modals or passive voice, and then you say, oh my God, I didn't learn the past participles, so really right now I can't use those other more advanced things. Again, if you're an intermediate student and you're just seeing present perfect for the first time, don't worry about it. If you don't have that much time, just focus on one thing. Learn the present, the past, and the future. If you can learn the present, the past, and the future and do it really, really well, you can communicate almost everything that you want to communicate in terms of actually surviving in a country if you come to Canada or if you go to another English-speaking country. Now, just remember, verbs are the heart of the language, so take it to heart. Look at the grammar, look at the auxiliaries, especially try to understand that the verbs are the actions of the language. So the more you have the ability to express the different actions, the better you will be able to communicate, okay? Let's look at some past participles and see what some issues could be, okay? Remember, we have two kinds of past participles. We have irregulars, like study, studied, studied, or we have irregulars like eat, ate, eaten. And again, how do you know? Because in English classes or books, you have a list where you have the first groups in present, past, and the past participle form of the verb. Really, really, you have to actually learn them, and the only way to do it is by studying them and using them quite a lot. And again, this kind of sheet of paper is more for an intermediate student, but if you're an upper intermediate or advanced students, you should know many, many more. Let's say 5 or 10 of these sheets with all the past participles so that you can express very different ideas in the different contexts that you are using them. Now, if you are more an intermediate student and you, again, are starting to learn the past participles, again, there are two groups that I really want to focus on because students really have a tough time trying to pronounce them. Okay, now, I've set them up in groups so that you can always remember the group. And the first group is this one. Again, if I have think, right, what's the past? Again, how did you pronounce it? I'm trying to hear it, right? Usually when I hear the pronunciation, my heart kind of skips a beat, right? I kind of suffer a little bit when students try to pronounce it. I'm sure yours is perfect, but again, you say thought, right? Thought. So I have think, past, thought. And remember, when you have this group, it's kind of easy because the past is the same as the past participle. So you only have to try to correct the pronunciation of one is thought. So I have think, thought, thought. Okay, now look at teach. If I have teach, what is the past participle? Again, I don't know. I usually, when I listen to my students, the pronunciation is not the best. So again, we're going to do it together. So it's teach, taught, taught. Okay. Now, if you see, all the group is the same thing. So I want you to really correct this pronunciation, and I want you to do it in this moment, because when you have this group, it's the same kind of pronunciation. Look, if I have think, then I have thought, thought. If I have teach, then I have taught, taught. Now, remember in the video we did for pronunciation that I uploaded a few weeks ago, in that video, we always emphasize that pronunciation is not in your head, it's not mental, it's something that is physical. So you have to change your body to be able to pronounce correctly. It's not that you're a bad or a good student, it's just that you have to adjust or change your mouth because it speaks your first language, Spanish or French, and it's not used to saying the words in English. So what do you do for this one? So you have think, and look at teacher Andy, I say thought, thought. The most important thing is open your mouth, right? Open your mouth. I know sometimes it's weird for some cultures to open the mouth so much, but again, you've got to do it and do it on your own and then exaggerate, and then you don't have to exaggerate as much. Let's do it together, right? So I have think, thought, thought. There you go, very good. Then I have teach, taught, taught. Can you repeat it for me? Teach, taught, taught. Again, look at teacher Andy. The mouth opens quite wide, right? Teach, taught, taught. And again, catch. What do you think it's the pronunciation for the past and the past participle of catch? Go ahead, catch. There you go. Caught, caught. And for buy, very good. Bought, bought. Again, open very much. And I have fight, fight, past, good, fought, and past participle. Same thing. Fought, fought. You see how much I open, right? How you have to adjust. And at the beginning it hurts, right? But you gotta do it. You gotta do it at the beginning to exaggerate, like going to the gym, and then it becomes more natural. And then seek, that is to look for. The idea is sought, sought, okay? Now, I'm gonna repeat them one time for you to actually see that teacher Andy really just moves the body very much, the mouth, and then that's the way you make your pronunciation better. Look at yourself on the phone. Look at a video with a selfie, right? And then you will be able to see it. Use a mirror, and that will help you as well. So I have here think, thought, thought, teach, taught, taught, catch, caught, caught, buy, bought, bought, fight, fought, fought, and seek, sought, sought. Very good. Okay, let's go ahead and continue with group number 2. Now, this group again, in general, just remember, there's so many past participles, right? We can't do all of them, right? It would be crazy. But I know from experience that these two groups are really difficult for students, so I want to focus a little bit on them and spend a little bit of time on them. Now, group number 2 is, again, it looks very simple, but again, when I'm surprised when I actually listen to students pronouncing them, it's just not the best pronunciation. So what do? We work on that so that you feel good, that your pronunciation is better. And again, remember, for the past participle in the past, if I confuse the two, the person in the conversation is going to be confused. Are you telling me about the past? Are you telling me about the present perfect? So in this case, it's really important. And remember also, past participles are used a lot in English. They're used in passive voice, untrue conditionals, modals in the past. You're going to use past perfect, future perfect. So I cannot emphasize enough that you have to really study them very, very much. Let's look at group number 2. Is this one? You know, begin, began, began. Sometimes when I listen to students, it sounds the same. Begin, began, began, right? Begin, began, began. And again, the ideas are very different in English, and the ideas we're going to work with them together, okay? So what's the difference? Remember, pronunciation is physical, so the first one is begin, no problem, right? But the difference between the past and the past participle, that's where students have a tough time, right? So you have, for the past, is like this, began, began. Almost like your cheek is going back, right? That's the best idea that I can give you, began, began. Now, the idea is begin, began, and exaggerate. You see how it goes, began, and then look at the past participle. Very different. My mouth is very close. Begun. Begin, began, begun. Begin, began, begun. So important because these two, again, really people notice when you hear the wrong pronunciation. They go, their eyes open wide, right? So again, let's look at number 1. Please repeat it after me. Begin, began, begun. Go ahead and do the 3 of them. How was it? Did you feel your cheek pushing back? Began? There you go. Exaggerate. You're going to exaggerate. There you go. So number 2 is this one. Swim, swam, swum. Swim, swam, swum. Swim, swam, swum. Very good. Try to do it yourself. And then for number 3, I sing. And what's the past? There you go. Sang. And the past participle? Sung. Mouth closed, right? Again, for drink, drank, good, and drunk. And sink, like that Titanic, right? Past, sank, and then sunk. Very good. And ring the doorbell, right? Rang and rung. Let's do all of them together one more time so that again you remember this second group. These 2 groups will really improve the pronunciation that you have. Begin, began, begun. Swim, swam, swum. Sing, sang, sung. Drink, drank, drunk. Sink, sank, sunk. Ring, rang, rung. Remember, we have many, many more. I just took a little bit of time to remind you that number 1, you have to really study them. If not, then how are you going to do the exercise? I'm sure that at the beginning of this lesson, you were thinking, oh my God, what's the past participle, right? You know, the pictures with the dreams. A fly, I don't fly, flew. And again, the more you have to remember, then your fluency goes down. And if you don't remember, then the fluency and the pronunciation really go down in English. Remember, if you want to take your English to the next level, to the really upper intermediate level, you have to really use present perfect. It is perhaps the most important tense in English because it really prepares you for upper intermediate and advanced grammar as well. Let's move on. So you see, we started trying to use the verbs without you really actually looking at the grammar. But don't worry, we looked at the grammar, we looked at how it is formed and what are the elements. For example, the auxiliary have or has, plus the past participle, which are regular and irregular. But again, when you try to understand and use your English, the most important thing is to try to understand when to use what you're learning, right? Especially for grammar. Many students, I think they feel good because they learn the past participle, they learn, the auxiliary have, has, but again, they don't really understand how to use it and will use it anytime. And again, it will sound a little bit weird, especially for present perfect. There are so many uses that it is not easy to try to understand all of them. Remember, in this lesson, we have chosen to try to focus on one of the uses so that you learn one and are able to use it, and not to try to understand the different uses 4, 5, 6, or not even mention present perfect progressive. The idea is if you do all that, you will know a lot, but you will use very little, right? That's what we do not want here at Proactive ASL with Teacher Andy. So again, let's look at the uses. There are 4 of them, basic ones, and we're going to focus on the first one. The first one is when you talk about experiences in general, and we've tried to do many exercises before with ever or never. Now, all the questions, have you ever, do you get the idea? We're talking about something in the past and about your experiences. So general that when we answer, we say, yes, I have, no, I haven't. But when we want to do something more specific, we have to switch the tense, right? Present, past, future, as we did when we looked at the basic grammar. Why? Because we want to be specific, and when we want to be specific, then this use of the present perfect does not work. Now, why is it important? Because you use it to really start a conversation. Have you ever this? Have you ever that? And why? Because you do not know, you ask general questions and then you move to something more specific. Many times people will go to the past. One example for you is this one. Have you ever been to Canada? Yes, I have. I went in 2009. You get it, right? Have you ever been to Canada? Again, a general experience in the past. Answer, short answer with auxiliary, yes, I have. And then switch, I went in 2009. You get it? Again, start the conversation, but you kind of switch after you have used it for this specific use. We will practice this use more and more. Number 2 is for actions that start in the past and continue in the present. Many students know this use and you're pretty comfortable using it. Again, this one is the one where you use for and since. And again, this is very important, especially if you're preparing for an interview, because in an interview, they will talk about general experiences, use number one, but they will ask you many things that start in the past and have duration in the past, from the past to the present. And when that happens, right, you use present perfect, right? Remember, when I use since, it's the start of the action. When I use for, it's the duration of the action. Let's look at an example over here. Again, for example, I can ask, how long have you worked at Apple? This is a typical question for this use of present perfect. But remember, this one, number two, is different from number one. It's not the same idea, right? One is general experiences in the past. Then number two, how long? I just want to know how much time from the past to the present. You get it? It's not the same. So again, how long have you worked at Apple? I can answer, right, with present perfect. I've worked there for 5 years, or since 2015. For 5 years, the duration, since 2015, the start of the action. And again, you have that specific use. Just remember, when we use the present perfect, we do not accent the auxiliary. So when I really ask the question, I say, how long have you worked? How long have you worked? Sometimes it's just the, right? Like with the contraction. How long have you worked? How long have you worked at Apple? I've worked, and you can hardly hear it, right? I've worked. Look at the video for pronunciation. It will help you out, okay? Now, what is use number three? Number three is used to talk about expected events or actions, right? And this one, again, is kind of more complicated for students, and you use already, yet, still, or still hasn't, right? Again, it's somehow finished. The action is finished, but the idea is it's somehow connected to the present. A typical example is, have you spoken to her yet? And I can say, not yet, right? It hasn't happened, right, till the moment, but my classmates already have spoken to her. You see how it's finished? So we think, oh my God, then if it's finished, we should use the past, but we don't. We use this one in the present perfect because it's somehow connected to the situation right now. Maybe you have a problem and you have to speak to the teacher really, really urgently. If you have not spoken to her, go ahead and speak so that we don't have any more issues in class. Or again, if you already have, then you have a feeling that, well, my present is okay, right? Because you have already done it, okay? Now, for number four, it's this one over here. Now, you can have it for completed actions relevant to the past. And again, this one is usually used with expressions like before. Again, the idea, this is why it is called present perfect. In all the uses, number one, number two, number three, number four, there has to be some kind of connection to the present situation. That's why it is called present perfect. But remember, and here we have an example. Have you lived there before? Again, question, have you lived? Have you lived? And again, intonation up for yes, no questions. Have you lived there before? Have you lived there before? Again, short answer, I've lived in Korea before. It is amazing, right? I've lived in Korea before. It is amazing. Again, usually it's not I have lived, but I've lived in Korea before. It is amazing. Some situation in the past, very general, not specific. This situation, we can use present perfect. So you see, we have four different uses. If we try to do one lesson for all of them together, I mean, imagine, it would be so long, right? Again, we can practice in the class, in the private class, each one especially, so that you have a real feeling for how present perfect works in each one, number one, number two, number three, number four. If it's for a situation in the past that is general, if it's for and since, starts and continues, and if it's already expected situation like already and yet. Again, a lot of information, but we try to do the best that we can. Here, again, I want to summarize the uses of the present perfect. There are multiple and complex, as you can see. That's why when we start here at Proactive ESL, we start to use the language. Even if you do not know the language really well, then we look at the grammar, then we look at some of the uses so that you remember always. First, I use what I know. Then I learn a little bit more, and then immediately I try to use it. That's why we have to be proactive when we learn the language. Let's move on. So we have already looked at how present perfect is formed grammatically and when in general you use it. Remember, we're going to focus in this lesson mostly on the first use, which is in general in the past. Have you ever is the typical example, and we've tried to do exercises before. It would be a good idea for you after the presentation of the grammar to go back to the original exercises and try to do them and see if now you can do them, right? So here we have the typical example for a general conversation. When we look at present perfect here at Proactive ESL, the most important thing, especially if it's the first time that you're looking at present perfect, is to understand that we always use the language in a conversation. So what I did was I actually looked at a specific conversation when you actually use present perfect. So we're going to go ahead and listen to it. You're going to try to look at how present perfect is used in an actual conversation. Look at the auxiliaries, look at the past participles, try to get the information. And again, this is possible because 50/50 from Pearson lets us download all these audios from their website. And this 50/50 series is really an amazing series. Go ahead, take a look at the conversation and just follow. So let's start with the conversation.
Unit 12. Have you ever... Warm up. Track 63.
Have you ever been bungee jumping?
No, I haven't. Have you?
Yeah, I went with my boyfriend last year.
Where did you do it?
In Canada. Have you ever been there?
Yes, I went to Quebec 5 years ago on vacation.
Great, a simple conversation that you can follow, and again, try to hear the present perfect, the beginning, just by looking at the conversation. Again, the idea is we try to focus on what we're learning. And for this one, if you try to hear it again, and we'll listen to it again in a second, but when we look at the conversation again, try to tell me when you have the present perfect. And here I've set it aside for you. And again, you have for the first one, have you ever been bungee jumping? And no, I haven't. Have you? Present perfect, all in red. And then you see how they start with a general question for general experiences in the past, but then when they want to be specific, they switch and they use past, for example. So I say, yes, I went in the yellow. Or question, where did you do it, right? Where did you do it? Because again, I want to be specific about the action that happened and is completed. There's no relation to the present, really. Again, if I want to ask in general in Canada, have you been there? Again, in general information about the past. And again, yes, I have, right? And again, many times they will not even use the short answer. It's really, yes, I have. But then they switch. I went to Quebec 5 years ago because 5 years ago, the action is finished. There is no relation to the present. So let's go ahead and listen one more time. I'm going to do it this time, but what I'm going to do is I'm cover everything for you so that you have to now really focus on your listening. And that's the way that you actually learn to be prepared to listen to a conversation in English. Let's listen to it again one more time.
Unit 12. Have you ever... Warm up. Track 63.
Have you ever been bungee jumping?
No, I haven't. Have you?
Yeah, I went with my boyfriend last year.
Where did you do it?
In Canada. Have you ever been there?
Yes, I went to Quebec 5 years ago on vacation.
There you go, a very short conversation so that you feel that you can actually understand a short conversation. And then if you can understand present perfect in a short conversation with use number one for general ideas in the past and how you switch from the general and then to the specific with simple past, then you're really good to go and you can start using present perfect in many situations, okay? So let's move on. Remember, here at Proactive ESL, we always try to focus on speaking, which is what I think students want to do, right? You want to be proactive in terms of your English, not only in terms of writing exams, not only in terms of completing books, but especially to really change the way that you see learning English, right? The idea is many students are really connected to the book. They really want to have a book, and the idea is the more you are disconnected from the book, the more you start to use the language, the better it's going to be for you when you arrive to an English-speaking country, because here you do not have the paper to actually proceed. So here at Proactive ESL, we usually try to do speaking exercises, and this one is one that I really like very much. You have student A and student B, and the idea for this exercise is this. Here you go. You have a conversation like we did before. And in this conversation, once again, we move from the general question, because I am not sure, to the more specific question. And then when you have the specific question, then you use the simple past, and then you give more specific information. Remember, this is the whole point of this lesson, for you to always remember, okay, present perfect, I use in use number one. When I want to talk in general, ask general questions. I have the question, have you ever, right? Have you ever gone? Have you ever been? Have you ever visited? visited? Have you ever eaten? Have you ever cooked? And then the person will answer, yes, I have, no, I haven't. And then usually they will switch to more specific information. I went, I did, I cooked, whatever, right? Do you get what I mean? And this exercise will help you to get into the rhythm of having this kind of conversation and feeling good that you can actually do it. So what's the conversation? You have it over here. You have two students, student A, student B. And of course, please do not show your page to the other person. This is from the 50-50 series, which is really, really amazing. And for this one specifically, we have student A, student B. There's Nicole and Isaac, and they have different activities. Usually the conversation will go like this. You can read it on your own. This one over here, has Nicole ever been on a boat? And again, look at the pictures. For the picture, you have information, student B, right? So student A asks the question, has Nicole ever been on a boat? Student B answers because they have the information. So yes, she has, the short answer. Please go ahead and answer the long one just to practice it. Also, yes, she has been on a boat. And again, immediately you just change to the more specific question. The question is this one, who did she go with? And again, for this one specifically, you have the answer. She went with her family, or she went with a friend. You see the dynamic? You have some information. Try to get the information that you don't have. Don't show the paper. Take a screenshot so each person has one of the sheets of paper, right? Remember, right now with the COVID-19 situation, we try to do all these exercises virtually, but again, it's not easy. But again, try to use an app like Skype or Zoom, connect with somebody else so that you're able to actually know and understand and feel proud that you're actually using the present perfect, even if it's very basic conversations. Once you start using it and then you study the past participles, then you will feel really amazing that you're moving from more intermediate to more upper intermediate English, okay? We have tried to focus on using present perfect with one specific topic. Remember, we have tried to work with dreams, right? We always think about what we would like to do in the future. Have you ever this? Have you ever that? And again, when we think about those dreams, it is a good idea to use present perfect. And what we're going to do, remember here at Proactive ESL, we focus on speaking quite a lot, trying to activate your English, here present perfect, but also we have to try in English, especially try to activate your listening. Remember, when we learn a language, listening is tough, and especially for English because of the way English works. Look at the pronunciation video. You will look at how English has groups when they pronounce. So when students try to hear, especially present perfect, they go like this. Usually when they want to hear, they say, she has been in the house. She has been. But nobody says that. People say she's been. Or people want to hear they have eaten, right? But nobody says that. We usually in English, the auxiliaries do not have accent, they contract. So I say they've eaten. Remember when we looked at the grammar, we emphasized that quite a lot. So one thing is to actually use it for speaking, right? They've gone, they've eaten, she's taught, she's thought. But another very difficult thing is to try to hear that, because if I just hear she's thought, she's taught, she's caught, she's fought, I just hear the past participle, right? That's why it's so important to learn the past participles. Again, if I say she's begun, she's eaten, again, I do not hear the auxiliary. Now, for this exercise, again, we're going to focus on the topic we're using. It's for dreams, and this exercise involves 4 people, and they're talking about their dreams. What I want you to do is listen to it, take a sheet of paper, and try to write down the present perfects that you hear. All of them are speaking about their dreams as we're trying to focus in this specific lesson. Let's go ahead and listen. Try to do your best. Remember, for the first time, don't pause the video. Don't go, okay, I'm gonna get it. Just listen fully, right? And then if you want, listen again. And then that time, you can start to stop and see what are the present perfects that you got and which ones you missed. Do not stop it. Listen to it completely, because it's a normal kind of situation where people give the information in a conversation, okay?
Page 12, Unit 2, Experiences. Lesson A, Hopes and Dreams. 1. Getting started. B. Listen. What is each person's secret dream? Do you have any secret dreams like these?
We asked 5 people, what's your secret dream? Jill Richardson, Vancouver, Canada.
Actually, I've always wanted to be an actor. I haven't had any formal training, but I've been in a couple of college plays, so my dream is to study acting.
Sonia and Carlos Silva, Brasilia, Brazil.
Well, Carlos and I have gone sailing a few times with friends, and we've had a lot of fun. So our dream is to buy our own sailboat, but we haven't saved enough money.
Raquel Garza, Monterrey, Mexico.
My dream? To go surfing. I've never tried it before, but my brother goes surfing all the time. He's even surfed in Hawaii.
Hiro Tanaka, Osaka, Japan.
Well, my parents have never traveled outside of Japan, so I want to take them to Europe. I've been there many times, so I know all the best places to go.
Great. So you see, we have 4 situations, 5 speakers. And the idea is, when you listen, did you get the past participles? Did you get the present perfect? Or was it tough? Again, repeat it one more time. I want you to try to do the best that you can for each situation. There are 3 or 4 past participles, plus get what the dream is for each one. So again, I'm going to give you the answers, but rewind it, listen to it one more time, try to write it down for speaker 1, 2, 3, 4. And then also, when you're listening, try to focus on the idea that when they actually speak, many times they do not say, I have traveled, but I've traveled. They use a lot of contractions because in English, we don't accent the auxiliaries. And that's why when I want to use and I want to understand present perfect, it's tough. I just hear past participles. And again, if I do not know the past participles, then I do not get the contraction and I don't get the verb. And of course, then I get really lost and I get frustrated and I get nervous that I cannot continue the conversation. The way that we do it is these kinds of exercises where you start to open your ear to those contractions and to the specific grammar topic, present perfect. Here is speaker A, and this is the answer for speaker B, and this is for speaker C, and this one over here is for speaker D. And again, try to check and see, try to repeat it. Once you have gotten them, again, try to not look at this specific information and try to listen again without looking at the answers. This way you will really see if you are getting the English contractions and the past participles or not. Again, this is possible because of Touchstone series. Again, an amazing series that really understands that the most important thing is not to focus on grammar exclusively, but trying to use the grammar comes before actually learning the grammar. Many students are really the opposite. They want to learn a lot of grammar, feel good that they know the grammar, but of course when they try to use it, it is much more difficult. So we have to try to switch it and again, activate your English by learning using it, okay? There you go, let's move on. For this final exercise, what I want you to do is this. Here we have a job interview. And again, remember, when we talk about present perfect, we somehow connect something that happened in the past to the present in some way or another, different uses. Here we have focused on have you ever, but you can also use how long, right? For and since, how long have you worked? And these kinds of questions, especially these two, are very frequent in job interviews. What I want you to do is I want you to look at this video that I have, again, brought for you. And while you're watching the video, I want you to think about five present perfect questions, and again 5 possible answers. Remember how the dynamic is. We first ask the question in present perfect. Many times we answer with a present perfect, but when we want to switch to more specific information, we switch to another tense, usually the past, but again, it depends on what you want to say. Again, once you have the 5 questions, try to write them down and try to have the dynamic of a conversation, right? How long have you worked at EF? How long have you worked at Apple? Have you ever blah, blah, blah. And again, when you have the dynamic, try to repeat the whole conversation out loud, record yourself for the conversation, and so that when you do it all together, then when you actually have a job interview, which is the important thing about learning English, to be practical and to try to find some benefit from learning English, then you will be more prepared, less anxious in terms of understanding what people ask and being able to answer. Remember, when we try to hear the present perfect, I don't hear the auxiliary, I hear the past participle. If I don't know the past participles, then of course I'm lost. If I can't hear the intonation in English, I'm lost, I get nervous, then the job interview goes down. The better thing that you can do is prepare by actually doing these exercises and forgetting about always the paper, always looking at the information, trusting yourself, developing this idea that the idea for learning a language is to actually use it really in live situations, okay? I mentioned at the beginning of the video that because I'm learning Mandarin and one of my dreams, as I mentioned to you, is to be able to teach in China, then I actually have been thinking about how to present present perfect for Chinese students. And there are three really important issues for Chinese students that are trying to learn English. The first thing is that in Mandarin, you do not have conjugation of verbs. Can you imagine that, students that are not from China? Can you imagine if your language did not conjugate the verb, for example, was or did or future? Again, if it's the same one, how do you know, right? How do you know what they're talking about? This is the case especially for, of course, present perfect. Imagine if your verb is always the same in Mandarin, in Chinese, then when you see present perfect and you have auxiliary and you have these different uses, then of course it's not easy to follow. What do Chinese students do? Again, in Chinese, you have different expressions like wo and le. One you use for the simple past, one you use for the present perfect. Here are some examples for you to always guide yourself in terms of learning the language. Number two is, remember when we learn Mandarin, many times the WH questions go at the end, like 什么? And the idea is we have to adapt in terms of trying to see how the structure of English and the structure of Chinese actually differ in many, many important ways. And finally, for me, this is really, really important because of the Chinese accent in terms of syllables. The idea is that when Chinese students try to make the fluency of English, the correct intonation, then it is very difficult for them, especially in a culture that tries to save face. You have to be able to take risks, try to do it, do not be afraid, try to go for it. And this way you will be more prepared to actually use the language, especially if you're a student coming to Canada or the US or an English-speaking country and going to university, right? So again, just to remember, number one, because again, Mandarin does not conjugate the verbs, you have to be prepared to understand that in English we use auxiliaries. And these auxiliaries show the time and not just the expression, right? Again, in Mandarin, we have guo le. The idea is for le, we use for simple past in Mandarin, and the idea for guo, we use for present perfect, for you to have an idea of the difference between the two. Number two, again, when we have WH questions in Mandarin, it comes at the end. So again, training yourself to see the different structure is difficult. For me, has been difficult to try to see the structure of Mandarin. And finally, go ahead and not be afraid to make mistakes, because the only way that your fluency, your intonation is going to be much better as a Mandarin or a Chinese student. The idea is to try to let go, not think so much about learning the language in terms of the Gaokao system, going for the exam, having the perfect grammar. Let go a little bit. I know that we have to have good grammar, but the whole point of Practive ESL is for you to change your mind about how it is that we learn to speak the language. Especially if you're coming to a country like Canada and you're a student, then what's the point of learning a lot of English grammar in China if when you arrive here, you just panic and are very frustrated that you cannot speak and you do not understand what people are saying? Do you know what I mean? At Practive ESL, Teacher Andy always gives you some homework so that we prepare for the online class using Zoom or Skype apps. And the first one is, as usual, for the grammar topic. We use Grammar Express, and this is an excellent summary of all the different parts of the grammar. Plus, it has amazing explanations. And I'm going to send you exercises for all the different uses of present perfect. So not only for number one, which is indefinite past, right? But also for and since, also for already and yet. So again, the more you practice it at home, the more you're going to be prepared to understand when we actually do it in class, and see now not only in use number one, as we have done in this lesson, but all the other more complex uses that will give you a better understanding of what it feels like to really be an upper intermediate student. Number two specifically is, again, looking at the past participles. I'm going to send you a sheet, right? And then the idea is we'll have a quiz. The idea for this one is I'm going to ask you to pronounce the past participles because who cares that you memorize them in your head? But not only that, the most important thing of the quiz that we're going to do together is that I'm going to tell you a verb. For example, I'll say taught, or I'll say, for example, eaten, or I'll say flown, and you yourself have to write the present, the past, and the past participle. I have done this exercise many times with students, and it is incredible how tough it is for them to actually hear if it's one verb or the other, right? So again, remember, what do we do with the sheet? Of course, we learn it, we memorize it, we try to understand what the verbs are, but more importantly, we try to use it with good pronunciation, and even more importantly, we try to see if we can understand what the different verbs are. After this exercise, we have exercise number 3. It's a kind of a nice exercise. It's called What Have You Learned? Again, the idea is we're trying to summarize the different activities that you have done in life and different kind of lessons that you can think about in terms of your own experience in life. Kind of beautiful. And then number 4 is a partner game. And the idea for this one is you use dice, you roll them, and then you go moving again the different chips. And for this one, you have a lot of questions with present perfect. Again, try to do it with the partner after I send it to your email, even if you don't have a partner, on your own, and then try to answer again using present perfect at the beginning, and then when you want to be more specific, switching to a different tense. And in the class, we'll try to focus and see whether you are actually doing it correctly or not. Finally, number 5, we've got to schedule the class. Again, we'll set it up so that it is convenient for you and me in terms of trying to find the best option. And then we will work with all these exercises. And if you have any questions, we will try to, again, look at them at that time. We have come to the end of another lesson here at Proactive ESL. What can I say? Again, one more time, thanks for watching the video, for taking the time to do the exercises. I know sometimes they're tough, sometimes the videos are long, but I really believe that if you do them, then you look at one specific topic, you will be prepared in that topic, you will feel sure about that specific topic, here present perfect, and then you can move on to look at the same skills that you develop in terms of learning other topics, tag questions, again later, passive voice when you are more advanced. So again, thanks very much. Try to remember these images that we did at the beginning. Go back to the exercise and try to redo it one more time now that you actually know how to form passive voice, and try to use many different past participles. Look at those beautiful dreams. Again, remember always present perfect by thinking about what have you learned? What have you learned in life? What can you share with us in terms of what have you learned in your life? Have you ever dreamt about this? Have you ever done that? Have you ever? What are your dreams? What are your hopes for the future? Connect that to present perfect so that you will always remember it, okay? So again, let's activate your dreams. Have you ever been to the place of your dreams? Again, let's go ahead and let's do it. Let's activate your present perfect. Let's activate your English. Remember, here is my website. And again, here's my email at proactiveesl@gmail.com. What can I say? But thank you once again. Remember, if you like the videos, give them a like. Again, comment if you have any question. I'll start to answer some of the questions. Also, again, subscribe to the channel. This is very important so that I can continue doing more and more videos and helping you out if possible with learning the language itself. Again, thank you so much. Have a good week. Take care.